spark, and our mission is to build a future where no one needs to come out anymore. Together, we can create a world where everyone has the right to love, to succeed, to have a family, and to live a full, happy life. Welcome back, everyone. Today, I am introducing you to Amber. Welcome, Amber.
Hi, everybody. It's good to meet you.
Let's start with telling us where are you from and what are you identify as?
Okay, well, I was actually born in a town called Charleston, Illinois. I currently identify as, I guess, a trans female. I'm a woman. Technically, I would fall under the category of trans female as of now. I was obviously born male. Well, not obviously, but I was once upon a time born male. And then I transitioned to live as female. Mm-hmm. So I myself 100% as female. But I mean, the world would probably classify me as a transgendered woman.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I like to teach, especially when I'm working with preteens and teens, that we are all born into one particular body and with one particular genitalia, and we are all holding a mix of masculine and feminine energy, and then our gender depends of which energy it's called to be expressed more of.
I agree.
Our mission here is to build a future when no one needs to come out anymore and everyone gets to just be and live their life without the need of labels. What do you think about that?
I'm all for that. I think that labels are definitely overused. Well, some people need a label to identify with in order to feel authentically whatever it is that they think that they are. Other people are not about labels. I'm a Virgo, and I do like to categorize things. It's within my personality. Certain labels I'm okay with.
Fantastic. So tell us, at what age do you realize that you might be different than everybody else around you expect you to be?
I would say that I probably started noticing that I was different once I was old enough to start verbalizing and vocalizing with words. So that would probably be, I guess, like 2 or 3 when you're old enough to make this and correlate objects with names and things like this. I always knew just by playing with other children that if I was called a boy and so was the boy next to me, also called a boy, I knew that we were different. That even though we were both called boys, I was not that kind of boy. So that would be the first time I made that sort of a distinction.
So here you are next to a boy. You look alike. You are called the same. And yet you feel that you were different.
Different, yes.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what did you do? I mean, as far as you could remember, when you grow and you have the language to verbalize how you feel, at what age you express all that?
Well, as a child, probably by about the age of 5, I was actually raised in 2 mothers. I had 2 mothers. My mother identified as lesbian when I was younger. So for about the first 10 to 11 years of my life, I grew up with a lesbian mom who had a lesbian partner. But because I was raised in this kind of an environment, being open-minded and having the opportunity to ask questions was something that was definitely not frowned upon in my house. So I also had an uncle who would be my father's brother who lived as a transgendered person at that time. And that was some 40 years ago in Illinois. So I was able to know at a very young age that there were different kinds of people.
How wonderful. What I'm learning from other guests here is the struggle that one had because they didn't have any models around them. Such a difference to be able to say, hey, I might be like my mom or I might be like my uncle. Identify with someone, associate with someone.
Yes, yes. It's to have the opportunity to see the difference amongst people as a younger person. It was actually brought to my mother's attention when I was younger by some of her gay or lesbian friends. And they said, gosh, Karen, I think that your son might be, different. And her immediate response to that was, how could you say that when you know how hard it is? No, he isn't. No, he isn't. So she very adamantly defended me by denying the fact that this was a possibility. me overhearing her doing this kind of put a light bulb on in my head that says, hey, maybe she doesn't want to know. So I didn't say anything. I knew that I thought it would disappoint her and it would make her feel silly for having adamantly defended me so.
Yes. She just didn't want you to have the same probably hard experience that she had. So I was out of protecting you. And I'm just curious, given the fact that LGBTQ was present in your family, did you ever needed to come out?
Well, yeah, I did, because as I said, I had denied it as a young child. When I was a child, you probably heard of this: when you wish upon a star, you see a shooting star and you make a wish. Mm-hmm. That we did. And my mom would say, oh, did you see that shooting star? And I would say, yes. And she would say, did you make a wish? And I would make a wish. And one day she asked me, she says, when you made that wish, did you wish to be a girl? And I said, no, I did not wish to be a girl, Mom. I wished that I could have all the things that girls have and do all the things that girls do. But I did not wish to be a girl at the time. But that was simply because I did not believe it was a possibility.
Like, yes. Oh, wow. Exactly. Like, how could you? Like, how could a little kid, I mean, there is adults in these days walking around and they still cannot understand how that is possible, right? I mean, let's be honest about it.
So, even me, 4 years ago, I didn't think it was possible for me. Mm-hmm. And now it turns out it is possible. But you don't know that something's possible until you venture out to try it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when was it that you took the first step, and what was the first step for you in, embracing your identity, living to that identity?
Well, as a teenager of about 16, I definitely knew that I was attracted to men. As far as my gender went, I definitely knew that something was not quite lined up. However, I did not want to be gay. Even though I was young and I knew what gay was, and I knew that I was different, I didn't want any part of it, because what I wanted more than anything was to just be like everybody else. And admitting that I was different would mean that I would be gay, which is something, again, that I did not want to be. So as a very young person, when I first ventured out into romantic relationships and things of this nature, I often ended up playing some sort of a female role, even though I was still technically male. So I guess doing that at first probably hinted to me that I was not like regular gay men, because I know that most gay men are very much about being man to man. Mm-hmm. And for me, something that just never really turned me on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So did you find yourself being in a romantic relationship with men or with women? Which one you find yourself?
With men, definitely with men. Mm-hmm. And I didn't tell my parents or my mother, even though I know she would have been all right with it, but I did not tell her because she had always defended me. It was always very obvious that I was effeminate, so I was constantly being accused of being gay. And my mom would say, oh, no, he's just sensitive or this or that, or she would always defend me. So once I really knew solidly within myself that indeed it was true that I was, I just didn't feel comfortable saying it. So I kept it to myself until I was about 17, when I had my very first serious relationship. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was going to be necessary to kind of come out with it. I did not have the chance to do that myself because evidence was found under my bed. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, got it.
I was then approached and I then admitted to it.
Interesting. Different way of coming out. So how was that experience, and how did your mom receive it? How would that influence the relationship moving forward?
Okay. Well, at first she says, I asked you this a couple years ago and you said no. Why didn't you say yes then? And I told her, just like I just told you, because I didn't want you to feel silly for always defending me. And then after we got past that, she said, well, I love you no matter what, and I just want you to be happy. But she said, I'm sad because I have lived a gay life before. And this, my mother talking, she says, and it can be really hard. Mm-hmm. And, when I came out, which was 20 some years ago, the world was a lot different, and at that time it was tough. Not as tough as it was for her when she was younger, because obviously with generations, this gets easier. But that was her main worry, is that it would end up being tough for me. And her second big thing was, it was okay if I'm gay, but she was very glad that I wasn't trans, because then it could be even harder for me. The thought of me being trans would be her worst fears realized. Having been close with my father's brother, who was trans, he was a good friend of hers. They were gay, both of them, obviously. And that's why she really knew that that was tough. He was an alcoholic and a pretty sad case. So I think she was kind of afraid that I would turn out like that as well.
Yeah, parents do that, don't they? You know, see a pattern and come up with a story and imagine all the silly things. Oh my God, my son might turn out like that, based on no evidence.
Exactly.
So you came out as gay, not a transgender, and what did you do next?
When I had a partner, well, a boyfriend when I was young. I met him when I was 17 and he was 24, and he was from El Salvador. And when I met him, I was only 17, and I was quite enamored of this real man that I had met, who wasn't like the gay men that I had met, but he was very masculine, very much a man. So I was very taken by him. We were very in love, and we were together for almost 5 years. So that's 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, we broke up. At 21, after breaking up with my first love, I was devastated, and I cared nothing about my body at that point. I had given it to him, and if he didn't want it anymore, I couldn't imagine giving it to anybody else in that same way. But at the same time, I wanted to be sexual. So I started to experiment with gender at that time. I actually did a little bit of sex work, and I did that dressed as a woman. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it as a woman so nobody knows that it's me. Now, that was just an excuse to dress up and have sex with men.
And experiencing how to be a woman?
That is my first experiences. First time experimenting with gender changes. And I did that for a couple of years and ended up in jail. And when I got out, my family and loved ones said, gosh, you've got to put down that skirt and them heels. You know, it's just getting you in trouble. So I did. And I stopped. At 20-something, I did not ever cross-dress or anything else again until I was 43.
Wow, that's a big gap.
A very big gap.
So what changed? What happened at 43 that led you to go back?
Good question. At 43, I had already been with my current husband for about 12 or 13 years at that time. And I met him through the gay leather community. I tended to be more attracted to men within this community just because they really clung strongly to a masculine persona, which is what I found attractive about men. I tried my hardest to emulate the men within that scene by looking like them, dressing like them, trying to change my voice and my mannerisms to be as masculine as I could, almost even taking a hatred towards the femininity that was within myself. I completely repressed it. But at the time was very open-minded towards that kind of stuff. We started watching RuPaul's Drag Race on television.
Oh, my favorite show.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, you never believe this, but I can do that. And he says, what do you mean? And I said, you know, I've told you before, I was in drag when I was younger, and I worked the streets and hustled in drag. So I can do that. And we kind of set that aside and didn't think much about it. And then I said, you know, I'm going to be turning 43. And on my birthday, I want to do drag. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. So find me a place to do it, you know? So he looked online and he found a club in our area. He signed me up and I went on a drag diet.
What is a drag diet?
I had been kind of overweight as a male because I had a lot of self-image issues and I just didn't really care about that. So I pretty much ate whatever I want and figured if I was a man, it didn't matter what I looked like. By the time I'm 43, I was up to over almost 200 pounds and I was not very happy in my body. So when I decided to do the drag, I said, you know, you're going to have to drop some weight if you're going to get into the right clothes. So I went on a serious diet, an exercise routine, and I went from 194 pounds to 144 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a perfect size 4. And I did the drag show. I invited friends from work. I even invited my mother. They all went to the club to see me. And the first reaction that I got from everybody who saw me, including my husband and my mother and my friends, was, oh my gosh, you're so naturally female. It's like I put on the clothes and the face, and all of a sudden I became myself, which I hadn't since I was in my early 20s. And I didn't even know that I could do it. I didn't even know it was possible that I could do that. And luckily, the club where I performed at, they record the shows and then post them later on social media. So a week later, my husband and I were at home. He says, "Oh my God, they put you on YouTube in your drag show." I said, "Oh my God." We watched it back. And as soon as I could see that woman in that video, who was me, up close, I started crying. And my husband says, "Why are you crying? You look great. You did such a good job." And I said, no, I'm crying because I want to be her every day. He looked at me and he said, "Really?" And I looked at him crying and I said, "Yes, really." And he says, "Then do it." Wow. So I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, if you're okay with it, then I'm going to do it because I already had love in my life and he accepts me no matter what." Because I'm enough to have that, I felt safe enough to go ahead and continue.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I am so happy for you, Amber.
Thank you.
There are way too many people, youth and young adults, in hiding. They hide who they really are. I mean, you included. You've been trying so hard to be somebody else for 2 decades. That must be very hard.
Yes. It.
What a beautiful gift that you give yourself for your birthday.
Yes.
So after that, had you start with the transitioning process, and are you with the same man, your husband, and how was that experience?
I'm still with the same man. 3 years ago, when I decided to go ahead and transition, I literally, after watching that show and making the announcement to my husband, I then made the announcement to my mother, and I told her what I wanted to do. And I then spoke with my PCP immediately because I happened to work in a medical clinic. So it was literally just like a walk upstairs to talk to my doctor about it. And then I talked to her at work and I told her what I wanted to do. And I saw a psychologist for whatever many appointments I had to do. I think it was 3, in order to get a letter that said that I was not crazy and that what I wanted to do was okay. And that once I provided this letter to my medical provider, she provided me with hormones and I started. Now, a lot of people like to start hormones and be on them for a year or more and then go and get hair removal and this and that, etc., trying to perfect their female presentation before actually living as a woman. I never did this. I literally dressed as a woman the very next day and went to work. I was not altered by hormones or surgeries or anything like that. I was shaving my face, putting on a lot of makeup and a wig, and buying clothes weekly to make sure that I didn't repeat the same outfit too many times when I started.
Welcome to the woman world.
But it was very well accepted. The medical building where I work has over 280 employees, and I had already worked there for almost 13 years as a male. So it was very well known, not only by the other employees within my building, but also all of my patient clientele, because I was a front desk person. I was a guy with a shaved head and a beard, and everybody knew because there was not a lot of men that sat at the front desk. So I was so well known indeed that when I did transition, I had to change the department in which I worked and go and take a job at a telephone desk where nobody could see me because it was too difficult to deal with the constant interrogation of people's eyes and ears and questions and things that they would say, that I'm actually still out of the public eye at work at that position. So I kind of removed myself so that I could become a new person without it being disruptive to everybody around.
I see. And I really appreciate that you said that you want to learn how to be a woman first before you focusing on your looks. That's very powerful. Going back to the beginning of this conversation and honoring what is the energy that it's being called to be expressed.
Right.
So how long was this transition for you? You mentioned 3 years and you really look like a woman to me.
I'm lucky because I was predisposed, I believe. I mean, I'm only 5'5" and I haven't had any surgery to my face. I've always had a face that kind of went either way. When I was a young child, I was often misgendered as a kid, even in like kindergarten up to like junior high. I was constantly misgendered because of my physical appearance and my personality. Not only did I kind of look like a girl, but I talked like a girl, acted like a girl. And it was a thing. In school, little boys peed on me in the boys' restroom because they said, "You don't belong in here." That was in the 3rd grade. So it was kind of always knew that I was different. I feel terrible for trans people who are not physically predisposed to looking like their desired sex. It doesn't make them any less of a woman if that's what they believe that they are, just because they have an Adam's apple or they happen to be 6 foot tall or have a hairy back. This does not determine your sexuality. That's already inside of you. I feel hard for people who have a harder time because I feel a lot of people say to me, oh gosh, it was so easy for you. It's not easy for me. I have to try. I mean, I wear a full face of makeup every day. I attach my hair 3 times a day, and I work consistently on my appearance so that I can blend in the world. And I don't like to use the word pass because I don't think that it's 100% that important. Ease of transition and being able to blend with other women is a gift. I happen to have that gift, but not all trans people do. And it's really not fair.
I hear you. Thank you for acknowledging that and for your encouragement that a hairy back is just a hairy back and has nothing to do with who you are.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for that. And I do want to ask you, what would be your advice to men that know they're supposed to be women and for whatever reason they just can't bring themselves stepping into that? And I'm really curious what you will say to an adult man in this situation.
I hear what you're saying. I think that the best advice that I could give when it comes to that is if you believe that you may be gender variant or you may be, in the wrong body, I think that the smartest thing to do is to educate yourself on gender identity. Find out how other people feel about it and read into other people's stories. There are so many stories out there of transition stories. And, some of them have amazing happy endings. Some of them don't. But amongst almost every one of these, you can find encouragement and inspiration when you see people overcoming and doing it. So I say, if you think you might be one of these people, then it's time to start educating yourself on the process and viewing and learning about other trans people's experiences. So you can kind of decide, hey, can I do this? Because you don't know if you can, if you don't know entirely what it entails.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, like me, I said for years, you can't do that because you're bald. I was genetically bald. I mean, I live in a wig. I said, you could never be a woman because you'll be a bald woman. Well, what's wrong with that? There are lots of bald women in the world, and it doesn't make them not women just because they don't care. So once I accepted that, I was okay with it. So I said, whatever it is that's blocking you or stopping you from thinking you can be who you want to be, you really need to tear that up and just throw it away and find a way to get over it.
Yes, I love it. This is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. We forget that what we think that is blocking us, that's actually most likely the biggest gift. And this is it right here, me and you, because you are bold and you are performing a lip sync of Sinead O'Connor, I think that's her name. I stumbled over that video and I admire your performance, and then I contact you and now we are here.
Yes.
So chances are that if you were not to embrace you being bold and make that performance, I don't think that we will be here right now having this conversation.
That's amazing. I love that. And honestly, I'm currently trying out for a television show, and I can't say the name of it because it would be against my contract. But in that show, I would be required to be seen without hair. I said, Amber, how are you going to pull this off on national television with no hair? And I said, what you need to do is you need to get out there right now, make a video on how to apply a wig. It's a perfect reason to show yourself without hair. Yeah. Plus, you'll be doing for the trans community. So that's why I did it. And honestly, the Sinead O'Connor part, because I'm a performer, so I lip sync and do celebrity impersonations. I specialize in doing Madonna. But I said to myself, let's make this funny and get people's attention. Yeah. Because when we need bald lip syncing this song, they're going to go, oh, she's put out another video, let's watch. And then they're going to find out it's not just a lip sync video, it's actually something educational. So I'm so glad that it got your attention because that's telling me that I did the right thing.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt. And I would really love to learn more about your performances and what is it that you do to support trans community. And hopefully you could come back and shoot another episode with us. What do you say?
Oh, I would love to.
Great, thank you. Well, it's recorded, so there is no turning back from this one.
Right. I love it.
But until then, if people want to follow you and follow your amazing performance, where they can do that?
Well, I can be found at Instagram at Amber_Adams, Victoria_Valentine.
Okay, anywhere else?
And then at Twitter, you've got Amber Lynn Adams, AKA Victoria Valentine again, because that again is my performing name.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amber, for being here today. I really appreciate all your sharings, and I'm looking forward to have you back.
Not a problem at all. Thank you for contacting me. I very much enjoyed it, and I love to try and help in anything I can do.
Thank you. See you next time, Amber. Thank you for tuning in to Redefine Family, a Spark Transformation podcast. Feel free to share your story, knowing that your story could change someone's life. We invite you to spread the love by sharing our message with others. And leave your comments at spark@redefinefamily.com. Until next time, remember that you are the spark in your life. Just shine bright.